There was no Yosuke in that place. No phantom thieves. Just a clear country sky, deep black at night, swallowing the brightness of countless stars in its emotionless void. Beautiful? Bag over his shoulder, Akira returned to where Yosuke was sitting and grabbed his wrist, maybe a little too forcefully. He didn't mean to, but he noticed the way his grasp made Yosuke wince. He didn't mean to, but he wanted to grab him, to wrap his fingers around him tightly, to keep him clutched in the center of his palm so he could take him with him. That was an even more dangerous thought, for reasons he didn't want to acknowledge. Yosuke? A moment passed, and he was still waiting for Yosuke to get up. His fingers closed around his thin wrist as he stared at the profile of Yosuke's face, turned away from him, partially hidden beneath his hair. He noticed that there was a faint redness in his cheeks. Right, still faced away, Yosuke placed a hand on top of one around his wrist, melting away Akira's firm grasp with the gentleness of his touch. Let's go, Akira. Yosuke got up and retrieved his own bag from Akira's desk along with his sketchbook. As he headed towards the steps, Akira looked down at his hand, spreading out his tingling fingers, then looked up to watch Yosuke's back as he walked away. He didn't have him in his hand anymore, but he could still feel him. When Yosuke stopped near the top of the stairs and turned around, his eyes were smiling, his face clear of whatever it was. Akira thought he'd seen a vague, lingering dream. Akira questioned whether or not he'd really seen anything there is at all. It could have just been his imagination. Yet, he flexed his fingers. They went down the steps together and passed through the shop, promising Sojiro that they'd be back soon. Morgana was out taking a walk somewhere. If he found out where they were planning to go, he probably would have wanted to accompany them. But Akira thought it was going to be the best if they were alone. It sounded like Yosuke wanted them to be alone. They took umbrellas and began heading for the station. Yosuke suddenly seemed much quieter. As they walked side by side, Akira kept looking at him, trying to read the look on his face. It was possible that he was simply lost in thought. But Akira couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. In that moment before they left the attic, the hand he used to hold his umbrella was still tingling with an anxious feeling. He didn't know what it was or what it meant or why it was suddenly there, and he wondered if he was the only one experiencing it. Yosuke. Ah! He jumped. Yes? He had no idea what Yosuke was on edge about, but Akira was glad that he wasn't the only one walking under two separate umbrellas. Made it awkward to get close, but he did his best, switching hands so he could get nearer and trace his fingers over the back of Yosuke's hand. With a satisfying smile, he watched as Yosuke shivered and clutched his hand in the other one, already holding his umbrella. It was still too soon for him to hold hands in public. Worried, worried about who might see them. It was a whole different type of concern at night. Even if they were phantom thieves, there were real people around them who were even more troublesome than shadows. Concerns aside, though it looked like Yosuke wasn't ready for that level of public affection anyway. So maybe that was why he reacted that way. Akira cursed himself internally. He really should have asked him about it when he had the chance. Letting time pass just made it awkward. And there was a possibility Yosuke wouldn't even know what he was talking about, or he'd deny it. Is something wrong? Yosuke asked. Akira pushed his fingers under his glasses to rub his eyes and shook his head. Nope. No problems here. You were just being quiet, that's all. Yosuke turned his head away, looking here and there and anywhere but Akira. I was just. His voice came out too loudly, which was suspicious to be sure. He coughed in an almost comical manner, to clear his throat before continuing. Ah, I was looking at the way the rain is reflecting. Everywhere you look, it seems to make everything look different, doesn't it? When it's raining, even a place as small as Yoganjaya can shine like Central Square. Akira made a skeptical sound, still suspicious. He could have sworn Yosuke had something else on his mind, but he believed that his artist eye was focused on the surrounding atmosphere. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, Akira looked around at the buildings that closed in tightly around them on either side and tried to see what Yosuke could see. It was really quite beautiful looking at it that way. The few lights from the corner fonts and the street lamps made unique reflections, and in the rain that touched every corner of the street, Akira didn't have to look up to know that he wouldn't see anything in the sky but a foggy haze. Yet, looking down at the puddles around his feet, the lights almost looked like a reflection of the night sky. Bright stars swaying in the ripples of the bottoms of his shoes, leaving invisible footprints in an imaginary Milky Way. You're amazing, Yosuke. Yosuke stared at him. Did I do something? Of course, Akira laughed. Do you think the average person can see things the way you do? I walk down this street to get to school every day, and I never thought about the way it looks or how it makes me feel. Even when it's raining, I'm always just focused on getting where I'm going. We live in the same world, but it's like you see a more beautiful version of it. That's amazing. Frick, I think I really hope it didn't wake my family up. Shoot. My mom's sleeping downstairs. Or was I? I don't know if it's that special, Yosuke mumbled, clearly trying to deflect such praise. That much is something anyone can do. You don't have to be an artist, you just have to look at things with your heart. Back when he first met Yosuke, that kind of comment would have sounded corny and made him laugh at him. But getting to know Yosuke made Akira realize how sincere he was when he said things like that. Like I said, you're amazing. Before Yosuke could argue with him, Akira hurried along. They were almost there. Once they were at the station entrance, they both closed their umbrellas and went down the steps, holding onto the railing so that they wouldn't slide on the slippery stairs. Once they were at the station entrance, they both closed their umbrellas and went down to the steps, holding onto the railings. Oh, frick. It was late and raining, but it still came as somewhat a surprise for them to find themselves alone. There's no one, Yosuke observed, inching closer to the tracks to look down the dark tunnel. Must we go to the usual entry point in Station Square? Waiting for the train seems unnecessary when it would be such a short ride from here. That is, I think we might be safe if we entered Mementos from this spot. Being alone is also to our advantage. You have a point. Nice thinking, Fox. Being on a platform should take us directly to the rest area. There was no guarantee that he was right, but it sounded logical. Holding his umbrella under his arm, Akira took out his phone and opened the metaverse nav. Once he was sure that Yosuke was also ready, he began to navigation and they were sucked into mementos. That was a sensation he'd never get used to. Oh,